Thank you for the introduction. I'm a member of ACA, and American Camp Association is an organization of over 25,000 summer camps with enrollments that exceed 25 million children each and every summer. ACA is already inclined to getting kids back outside. So their association affiliation with the No Child Left Inside Coalition was instinctive. It was at an ACA conference in 2006, where Richard Louv was a keynote speaker, that I first heard him. That was the very summer that we were opening our Barty Mountainside summer camp facility in Urbana. It's a 115-acre farm, very close to 270, and it's an incredibly beautiful and pristine place right in the shadows of Sugarloaf Mountain. And when I heard Richard Louv talk, his message resonated with me profoundly. As a summer camp provider, I kind of grate when every daycare, and even private school for that matter, morphs into a summer camp program. They're daycare all year long, and suddenly we're a summer camp. And it may mean that they go swimming at a local pool for 2 or 3 days out of the week. But for the most part, the programming is essentially the same. And for the most part, a lot of these programs don't go outside. At my facility in Urbana, at the Barty Ranch, and even in our school-based summer camps, we put a complete emphasis on making sure that even if it's hot, even if the weatherman says, oh my gosh, code red, air quality day, deer ticks, every reason under the sun not to go outside, we simply ignore that. We assure the parents that they're going to be hydrated and sunblocked, and that even if they come home with a few scrapes, it's okay. Mountainside is, I owned this property for almost 2 years before I hacked my way to the far reaches of this 115-acre farm, and there I found this beautiful North Branch stream that passes through it, and it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know what I had. So when I heard Richard Louv speak in 2006, and this nature deficit disorder, it's like, this is what I'm about. Now, at my camp, I've got a swimming pool. We have ball fields, basketball courts, soccer fields, everything that you would see at any private school or any schoolyard for that matter. But what makes that facility special, where the magic really happens, is down in the woods and in the stream. I would be the worst counselor at my own camp, because if you give me 15 kids and a creek, I'm going to miss lunch. I'm going to miss arts and crafts. I'll probably miss swimming. And it's all I can to get dragged out of there myself. One of the things that I can attest when we talk about this nature deficit disorder is that over the past few years, we also run a challenge and retreat center, corporate retreats. We have private schools. We're positioning ourselves for an environmental educational facility, and I'll explain a little bit more of some of the things that we're doing. But everyone who visits, with the exception of maybe someone who might get a bee sting or fall and scrape their knees, everybody, adult or child, who comes to my place and gets down to the stream or the sycamore tree that we dropped and made a bridge out of it and a tunnel, doesn't want to leave. One of the things that Britt Slattery had mentioned in her time, that she's kind of elevated to a position of administration and doesn't get outside as much. Well, I get to tell you, I'm outside all the time. I get to do the fun stuff that some of these most important people who are pushing and encouraging schools to adopt this environmental literacy mandate and to implement environmental programming in the schools, a lot of them don't get to play outside anymore. I do. When I was younger, the term, you play like a girl, was an insult. The girls I knew growing up many years ago wore patent leather shoes and dresses and frilly socks and didn't get dirty. That no longer is true. I think a lot of parents are supercharged their young women, their girls, and this adage of girls rule, boys drool is sort of coming true. When I have a group of 5th grade boys who've been tethered to an iPad or a video game on my high ropes course, many of them wilt. I don't insult them, I don't degrade anybody, but I get a lot of 10-year-old boys crying for mama. And it's amazing because I can take first grade girls and they're slinking up my climbing wall like a lizard. So that whole paradigm has really shifted in a sad sort of way. And at my summer camp, it's like, give me 2 or 3 weeks with a child who is disassociated or disconnected with nature, and I'll cure them. And I'll make them advocates. And it's great for the children that I can serve in the summertime. I get some kids who are there for a week, some who are there for all summer. And they truly are the lucky ones. I have this adage that my job is to make children cry on the last day of camp. And I'll even rub it in. It's like, well, you know, guys, I know that you got school and homework. And when it's February and dreary, and you're looking outside your window and you can't play, close your eyes for a minute and think about where you are now. And what is happening at this facility, which is focused on the outdoors, no matter what the weatherman says, is absolutely magic. And that is Lou's message. When I saw him in 2006, he got into my head so resoundingly that I've had to actually delegate the operations of my summer camp to my son and some other very capable people as I am trying very hard to pursue this mandate. And what I'd like to talk about just briefly is what this facility is and what it's become, because when I bought this farm, I was thinking I need to build a summer camp. I create community. I work with children. This is what I do. This is my wheelhouse. But I knew when I bought it that it was going to be more than that. It would be almost a crime to utilize this facility for just 9 weeks out of the summer when it screamed for much more. I didn't know exactly what that was, but I knew that the potential was great. And when I saw that, I've got mature forests. I got big beech trees that are growing in the back. This amazing wetland, about 10 acres of wetlands, and as I had mentioned, the North Branch that passes through. One of the things I want to try to underscore is that in the state of Maryland, there are amazing resources, and I'm not just talking about land. I'm talking about people. Mayo is, if I'm not, make sure I get this right, Joanne, the largest environmental association in the state. It's one. Mayo is huge. It's incredibly well organized. It's been around a long time. And the people who are at it are remarkable. And the energy that they harvest is remarkable. I will tell you, I actually, when I was at Mayo, I bought this book, and there was a lot of environmental educators who took this book, and the title of it, it was a little icy when Salen and Bloomstein started to speak, because the failure of environmental education, you're talking to environmental educators. That sort of stings. And yet their message is something that we all understand. I attended the reception at the Philip J. Merrill Center when this environmental literacy mandate was passed. And Kevin Maxwell is the superintendent of schools for Anne Arundel County, who is a champion for environmental literacy. And he said, in Anne Arundel County, the 12 major tributaries that pass through Anne Arundel County into the Chesapeake Bay, of the 12, 8 of them are endangered, and 4 of them are toxic. If you have an open wound, you should not jump out of your boat into Weems Creek because you risk gaining a MRSA or a staph infection. Growing up, I heard about, rivers in Europe that were dead, the Thames and the Seine. And it was unfathomable to me that anything like that would happen in our country, in our society, especially what we know. When I was growing up, you could get Save the Bay stickers anywhere in Maryland. We've been talking about environmental literacy and environmental stewardship of the Bay for 40 years. Kevin Maxwell says we've been talking about it, but we have failed. And we can no longer afford to fail. The economic impacts are far too great. So I will admit, and I'll concede immediately right now, that I I'm not an environmentalist. In fact, at the Mayo Conference, they had environmental trivia, and it unveiled to me just how little I know and how dumb I am. In fact, when I was a kid and went on outdoor ed, I was the kid in the back who was wet-willing all my friends and not paying attention. But the key here is that even now, at any age, we can learn. To my young friend who's there in the front, you're going to school, you got to go to third, fourth grade, second grade. You don't stop learning when you're finished with school, and I'm learning exponentially now. When I take kids down to look at our amphibian breeding ponds, I can't necessarily identify the species of that frog. The important thing is that I surround myself with people who do and can teach. What we've done in the past 4 years at Mountainside, is that and when I talk about these incredible resources, in Frederick County alone, the Farm Services Agency, Terry Welsh, worked with me on obtaining a grant to do, through a Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, a riparian buffer. We planted 4,000 trees. I took 9 acres of farmland out of crop production to install trees. Is Heather Montgomery here? My friends at the Monocacy Catoctin Watershed Alliance are amazing. There is an incredible knowledge base of people in this county, in this state, that can teach you all that you need to know. The Jessica Sipe worked with me to obtain a $200,000 grant to do a wetlands restoration. As a 319 grant through the EPA. Now, I wouldn't have had the wherewithal, the perseverance, the desire, or the ability to write that grant. But Jessica did. It took 2 years after we were awarded the grant to have it actually implemented. Now, I'll tell you, what I have is a couple of muddy ponds. I probably could have done this a little bit cheaper. But what we have is this potential vehicle for learning. We put in a 10-kilowatt windmill, a 10-kilowatt solar array. I've planted orchards. So what we're trying to do is trying to create a demonstration site where a variety of disciplines about sustainability and the environment can be taught. We are part of the winter cover crop program. I'm playing by the rules. We put in composting toilets. It was an enormous fight. When we put in the composting toilets, it was the largest commercial installation for composting toilets in the state of Maryland. I had to go to Baltimore. I sat in front of Dr. Tung Sung Chen, the septic guru of Maryland, and promised him that if my composting toilets failed, which that can only happen if you're negligent, that we would put in the $1.2 million drip irrigation system that we had to design as a backup. So what we've done is we're creating an environment where environmental education can be taught. Richard Louv talked about the need for creativity. I know that there are teachers in this room, in fact, every FCPS teacher and Montgomery County teacher, any teacher who is in here, I applaud you for being here today. And the environment that you have to work within, the budgetary constraints, the cutbacks, the fact that at that environmental summit, NOAA lost $35 million in funding. How are we going to make this happen? Well, what I really want to try to encourage people, and where the creativity comes in, is I'm a guy, not even a particularly well-educated guy, with a passion and a love for children and an absolute concern for nature. You know, as a 55-year-old, if the planet's dying, this really isn't my problem, because I'm going to be out of here before the world ends. The catch is that I have some 2.5-year-old grandchildren that I care deeply about, and I want them to have the same world that I had the blessing to inherit. So I have this incredible responsibility to do anything I can. You know, we can talk about saving the rainforests or sub-Saharan Africa. But even in Frederick County, Chesapeake Bay stewardship starts here. It starts in Adams County, Pennsylvania. By doing these wetlands restorations, by installing rain gardens, by trying to what we call slow the flow, by trying to get the stormwater to stop blasting through the wetlands, but have it filter like it's supposed to, incrementally, imperceptibly, we can make significant changes and substantial improvement. If we learned one thing from the BP oil disaster in the Gulf, is that the planet can't start healing itself until you cap the well. 12 million barrels of oil dumped in the Gulf of Mexico every day for a parade of months. What a disaster, the worst ecological disaster of our time. But nature has an incredible way of healing itself if we just start, or if we just stop poisoning it, if we cut off the poison. So what needs to be done? The ecosystem in Anne Arundel County, the tidal Chesapeake, is uniquely different from this Piedmont section that we have here in Frederick County and in Garrett County, the mountain section. But each area is part of the Bay watershed, and each area has a significant role in helping to improve the health of the Bay. So if we do rain gardens, and if I do wetlands restorations in my property, and at Worthington Manor Golf Course, where I happen to get tons of golf balls, I tell my campers, if you find any Pro V1s, save them. I'm going to use them because I do golf, and that's not environmentally friendly. I probably ought to back off on that one. But the Worthington Manor has engaged in part of that wetlands restoration. We have done significant improvements on the North Branch. If we can get some landowners below me to do the same, if we can get landowners on any tributary in Frederick County or Montgomery County or PG County to start adopting these principles, you incrementally stop the flow of poisons that are killing the Potomac and subsequently the Chesapeake Bay. So we can do this, and we can make it relevant. And as wonderful as it is to save the rainforest, which I'm never going to probably have the blessing or opportunity to go to, we can begin to improve the health and maybe even save the Chesapeake Bay that each of you and I relish as Marylanders. Now, what's going to happen in a few minutes is there are going to be some panel discussions, and there's some very exciting things that are happening in this area, in this state. John Smucker sitting in front of me, he's making me terribly uncomfortable because he's in a tie. I know John Smucker to be, he's constantly muddy and dirty. We did a series of rain gardens on our property, and we had Volunteer Frederick, these kids from Volunteer Fred, to come in and do some installations, and we really had an amazing ability to teach. John is an incredible resource of ideas and information, and we need, and we have people like him who can make these changes. One of the compelling issues that I touched upon is that, well, how are we going to pay for this? I have to tell you, when this environmental literacy mandate was passed, the immediate reaction is, well, how are we going to do this? How can we afford it? We just got a major cutback in funding. Now, hopefully, with the new, now that we've retired the No Child Left Behind initiative under George Bush, and the chances for having environmental literacy incorporated into new educational standards, we do have a window here, and we can see and hope for the potential for federal funding. But Lou's message resonates with more than just 60-year-olds. The world he talked about, my mother, turn the dang TV set off, go outside and play, and don't come back until dinner. That's the way I grew up. The parents I work with in my summer camp, they don't know. Well, they do know. They would be terrified to think that I'm taking their children down into a deer tick-infested wetland, and what's going to happen to them. Are they going to dehydrate, or are they going to become overcome by heat stroke? And we're outside all the time. The mission for me is to make those kids who come and visit me, advocates, less fearful of nature, so that maybe, just maybe, they'll encourage their parents to go out. The programs that Lou is talking about, family camping, getting outside in the parks, that's all a piece of this. How do we change the mindset? One child, one person at a time. Now, at the facility that we've built, we have sustainability, and I have a guy. Everybody needs a guy. I got a guy who's pledged to fund what would be the most sustainable building, quite possibly in the country. We will use geothermal, wind, solar to power it. We will purify rainwater and make it potable, compost waste. We'll have a greenhouse. We'll germinate vegetation indoors that'll then transplant outdoors. In fact, unlike most buildings that we build nowadays, which we rape the land, plop the building on, put some power and electricity and heating and air conditioning, and we move on. This building will be very much like buildings were in the past. You harvest the wind, you harvest the sun, you harvest the rain. You block the cold air, you capture the sunlight into greenhouses. The other component to this, though, is not only should we have a No Child Left Inside coalition, how about a No Senior Left Inside coalition? At the Brookside Gardens Nature Center in Montgomery County, they have 1,200 senior citizen volunteers who work, and it's amazing to watch these 70-year-olds, these octogenarians. They're mulching beds and clearing trails and tending to gardens. And the facility, what we do needs to be multi-generational. My dream is to bring octogenarians and 8-year-olds and put them together. Take this knowledge base that's been acquired in so many years with senior citizens, marry that to kids who don't know. Engage corporate individuals. Chad Tyler's here, he's a developer, showing the business community how green architecture needs to look, because the building we're going to build is going to be no more expensive than any conventional construction. The idea is to show how it can look and how it can look differently and better. I'll conclude with a thought. And it's like, if you ever, well, we didn't have any snow this year, but when it's going to snow, and the weatherman's saying 6 to 10 inches or 4 to 2 or whatever it is, 2 to 4, you can just go outside and you can feel the dampness in the air. You can feel, wow, this feels like it's going to snow. And the clouds are low. And what begins to happen when the snow starts, it starts with just a couple of flakes. It's going to be a good snow. Within a few minutes, the landscape has completely transformed. At first, the walkways are covered, then the low brush, and then in an hour or two, you've got a different world. What I propose to everyone in this room, and what we're going to be discussing in the panels that follow, is that Richard Louv has been the catalyst for those first few snowflakes of change. And that what we in this room can do, what's happening with Mayo, what's happening with the Maryland State Board of Education. Maryland is leading the charge in the country. I know this because it was verified at ACA National. States are looking at what's happening here so that they can replicate there. We do it first. We show them how it looks. And you have a blizzard of change. You have a movement that is substantial, that is tangible, that's real, and that is hopeful. What are you doing, Tom? I'm up? Okay. Again, I was so grateful to Elizabeth Prongas. When she said, we're going to get Richard Louv to come, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's coming here? Then I've got to get all my friends from the Maryland Partnership for Children and Nature, everybody else who's doing things, and bring them here so that anyone who attends this conference understands what's possible. And what's possible is happening right here, right in this state, with a lot of the people who are in this room. We just have to get more people involved. So thank you very much for your time.